Hey guys, it's Bridget with San Diego Seed Company, and we're here at my house in the garden on this beautiful, steamy, rainy morning, and we're going to talk about potatoes. We're going to talk about where you want to plant your potatoes, the ideal location, and considerations if you don't maybe have that type of setup, where you want to plant them, in pots, in raised beds, in the ground, and how can you get the most potatoes out of your growing season with our pro tips. Okay, so I've got some potatoes here. These are seed potatoes, and you can actually see that they are sprouting nicely. Check that out, super rad. We have several videos on potatoes, on how you can actually get multiple potatoes out of one, how you can cut them up. Make sure you check out those videos for some more basic information. But for most of you, you know that this is a seed potato, these are sprouts, and this is what we're actually gonna plant. Now let's go look in the garden on an ideal location or a not so ideal location of where we can plant them. All right, so we're actually in the back part of our garden setup where the soil is not as good. And interestingly, we actually have, these are potatoes, and these are 100% volunteers from previous years when we have planted them. The great thing about potatoes is if you don't get every single tuber out of the ground, well, they're going to pop up in ideal conditions. And we've had a lot of really good rain. It's really been a great, cool fall for us here in zone 9 and 10. So they're popping up, which is fabulous. I'm gonna leave these in the ground. I'm gonna keep hilling them or putting more soil on top of them so I can get more potatoes. And likely what'll happen is this area will be a potato patch, if you will, for years to come, because no matter what you do, you can't get every single potato out of the ground unless you're like really, really thorough, and apparently I'm not really, really thorough. So I left a few in there. But I do want to show you that we went to go plant more potatoes this season in this area, and I was a little surprised at how terrible the soil is. So you can see here, I've got some weed cloth that hasn't been pulled up yet, and in between it, digging down here, now we've gotten inches and inches of rain, and it's still that hard. And what you can see here is there is a lot of roots in there. I mean, look at that. Now, and look at that big old chunk of clay. So this is the kind of the worst part of our garden soil because it's the furthest away from the house. And as you get further away from the house, we've done less and less amending over the years. And this soil is not great. It's very like clay. Obviously I can hold it in my hand. There's not a lot of organic matter. And the biggest thing here that's going to make this not a good potato patch is all of these roots. Now, it wasn't like this a few years ago, but if we look behind us, there is a bunch of bamboo that has gone crazy. And that's about half of the bamboo that was there. We just recently chopped a lot of it down to get more sun in the garden. So we got bamboo on one side, which I did not plant. It was here when we moved in. It is beautiful, but it is very invasive. We'll never get rid of it. And the roots are coming into the garden and really stealing a lot of moisture and nutrients and making the soil not a great consistency. And then a double whammy, we look on this side and we've got these massive, what are those called? Palm trees, those things. We also didn't plant those, and when we moved in, actually, they were almost dead. But over the years, as we have amended the garden soil and we have given them a little bit of water, they look a lot bigger and a lot healthier, which is great. But guess what's happening? Also, those roots are coming over here, and you can see I just have soil that is not conducive to growing really any tuber. Another good example would be like dahlias. I don't want to put my dahlias in here because the tubers need space to grow, and they're totally invaded by all of these roots from these two pretty invasive plants. So this is not a great space to plant potatoes directly into the ground. But I know a lot of you grow in very small spaces. Maybe you're in urban spaces. You can't get rid of your neighbor's bamboo or your neighbor's palm trees. Those are ours, I understand that. But in your particular situation, they might be your neighbors. What do? Well, in this particular situation, that is when I would plant in a raised bed. Because obviously there is soil here, and this soil over time can get better, but there isn't enough volume of soil to plant something like a tuber. So by actually building a raised bed and having soil above the ground that we can control the nutrients, the texture of the soil, the organic matter of the soil, you can get better harvests of things like potatoes, or really a lot of crops, because you have more control. So what would you do with a space like this? Well, if you have this and it is an area where you want to plant and you are irrigating and it is full sun, there is a variety of things you can grow, but think shallow rooted crops. So things like lettuce, they don't go very deep. You could do a row of lettuce here. You could even do things that bulb on top of the ground like onions. Herbs would do fine here. What wouldn't do great here are things like tomatoes, because I actually tried to grow tomatoes here last year and they didn't do great, in part because we had a lot of shade from the bamboo, but also because the roots just couldn't get through all of this really terrible soil. Now, I could come in here and I could, don't judge me, there's that terrible word I'm gonna say, I could till, I could break up these roots, but guess what's gonna happen in a season or two? These two invasive plants are just gonna grow their roots again, and I'm gonna have to keep doing it over and over and over again. So instead of trying to make this soil be exactly what I want to grow, say potatoes, I'm gonna try to grow crops in here that will do well in this particular soil type, location, consistency, and so on. So we're actually going to go over to one of our raised beds. I'll show you how to plant potatoes in that type of situation. But before I do that, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you're notified anytime we put out a video, and so that I can help you have the best garden possible. Okay, so we're here in front of my raised bed. I've got a potato. Here's the quick low, that's weird. Here's the quick down and dirty of how you would plant your potatoes. So really important that you have a healthy seed potato. You can use a potato from the store, but those are covered in something that helps them not sprout. You know, might take longer. If you have a healthy seed potato, you've got the sprouts here. If you want to make multiple seed potatoes, you actually can cut this and let it scab over. So give it a few days to heal basically from your cut, and you can plant those pieces in the ground and you'll get multiple seed potatoes in one. You can also just plant this one. You don't have to. You can get a little bit more yield when you cut it up. It also helps you space out your seed potatoes, so totally up to you. Really important, this is the sprout. This is what becomes the plant above ground. So you don't want to plant it like this. It still actually can work, interestingly enough, because the sprouts will find their way, but why give it more work than it has to? Sprouts up, put it in the ground. This is going to become the green material that you see on top, what's going to photosynthesize, collect energy from the sun, and grow the actual tubers underneath. How deep do you want to plant them? Well, you've got options. The cool thing about potatoes is there's a lot of different ways that you can grow them, but the point is the potatoes grow underground. So you wouldn't want to plant this really shallow like this. That does nothing for you. You either want to plant this really deeply or continue adding organic matter on top of the potato so that it continues to grow more tubers. Tubers that grow close to the soil surface are actually going to be a little green, and they're not going to be super flavorful, and they're going to be small. The best tubers, potatoes that you get are actually much deeper into the ground. Now, for a raised bed situation like this, what's great is it's really nice, fluffy, light soil. I know that there's no roots from invasive trees or shrubs in this raised bed. And you can actually see we've gotten a lot of rain, and that has pushed the level of the soil down quite a bit. I need to raise this up, which that'll be on my very long list of things to do. But in the meantime, if I want to plant a potato, we'll grab one like this. This is great. And this is a good example of how you could cut this in half and actually get two. When you cut it in half, you do want to make sure that you let it scab over or heal, because if you cut it and put it directly into the ground, it's more likely to rot, especially in the wet conditions that we have had in the last 2 weeks here in Southern California. And actually in a situation like this, you could actually cut as many times as you want where there is at least one sprout on it. Word of caution though, the more cuts that you make, the more like wound that you give to the potato, which is more area that has to heal, and if it's not fully scabbed over before you plant it, it's more likely to rot. Generally, I try not to make too many cuts on a potato just because you're still gonna get a lot of potatoes, trust me. Now, if you were like, I don't know, on the moon and you only had one potato, I'm referencing a movie here, and you really needed to survive, you would cut this up a bunch of times because you want lots and lots of potatoes. But I'm sure you're not living on the moon, or maybe you are, whatever. But the point is, you can cut this multiple times and get more potatoes, or you can plant it like this depending on what you want for your yield. In this particular situation, this soil is fabulous. I've got an Oya here that I have used to keep everything moist. And this is not celery, I know it looks like it. It's actually ranunculus flowers, which there's a little bulb here that came up. I'm going to plant it on this side of my Oya because I know that these bulbs are growing and they're gonna flower. I am gonna pull out this nasturtium because it's just really a weed for us, and it's going to compete with my potatoes. I just want a nice clean area to plant these. And I'm going to dig down and look at this. Look how gorgeous this soil is. The fact that I can just do this with my hands, that's one of the reasons why it's easy to garden and raise beds, is you can control the soil, and look how great that looks. That is amazing. So I'm gonna plant this potato very deep. And the reason being is I know I have really good soil in here. And also, this is incredible. So we've gotten records amount of rain in San Diego in the last week, and six inches down, this is almost bone dry. So that's just a little side note to remember, that even when we get a lot of rain here in Southern California, it doesn't mean that it penetrates really deeply. So I'm still gonna wanna irrigate because the soil down below is so dry. So a potato like this, I'm gonna put this so that the sprouts are up. They're gonna grow up, and now I'm not going to fully cover this. The reason being is it's gonna take a long time for those sprouts to get that far up. So I'm only gonna put, I don't know, 2-3 inches on top. I'm gonna leave it there, and in a couple weeks I'm gonna start to see potato sprouts coming up. I'm gonna see the beautiful green leaves that we saw earlier in the video. As those continue to grow, I'm gonna add more soil on top so that it can send out roots to become more tubers. This is a very easy way to basically do what we would call hilling when you're planting in ground, where you're just hilling up more soil onto the potatoes. But I'm doing kind of the inverse of that. I'm digging a deep hole, I'm putting the potato in, and I'm covering it with a little more soil every couple of weeks. If you're the set it and forget it gardener, this is not a great method, because if you don't continue to add soil on top of that plant, your harvest won't be as good because it's not producing as many tubers, it's not covered in as much soil. In that particular case, maybe you would not plant it as deep, you would cover it up once, and you'd call it good. How you garden is up to you in your particular situation, but I just gave you 2 really good tips on different ways in which you can maximize your yield for potatoes. So what are the main types of potatoes? Well, depending on when you're watching this video, we could be sold out. We get them in limited supplies. We've got Yukon Gem, Red Pontiac. We also have the beautiful banana. Looks like a banana, Russian banana. These are the main varieties that we have. And when do you plant them? So depending on where you're at, in zone 9 and 10, you have a very long season to plant them. You plant them in the fall, they will enjoy winter rains all the way until the spring, and you'll have bigger, more robust harvest by the time end of summer comes. If you're in an area that gets hard frost, where you're not in zone 9 and 10, you will plant them in the spring after the ground has thawed and can be easily worked. So these are some of the potatoes that we carry, and what's amazing is there's so much biodiversity in potatoes. We want to know from you guys, what is your favorite variety of potatoes? What should we be carrying? And what do you love to eat in your kitchen?